Hello everyone, we are from Group 6 for Organizational Design and Behavior Class Q. Now we will share about our research on the application of communication and leadership, a case study on HIMASISKAL ITS. Next. This is our team that consists of Adriani Hermawan, Nur Aini, Anggrah Maningsi, Amira Rida, and Firsa Zaidan. Next. The first section is introduction. First is background. The communication is an activity that has become an important thing for human in organization and social life. In organization, communication must be well established smoothly, whether it is delivered by verbal or non-verbal. Through communication, we can reduce conflict or misunderstanding, whether it is between individuals, teams, or organizations. Good communication must be owned by the leader because a leader has an important role to make the goal of organization can be realized. But in reality, not everyone can communicate well. So many people that don't know how to communicate well, so they make conflict or misunderstanding. The role of leader is needed in this case. In fact, a leader can trigger conflict or misunderstanding in an organization, whether it is from his leadership style, how to work, how to express opinion, and etc. The situation will affect their performances, so the activities to achieve organization goals will be disrupted. Next. So this is our problem is in this research. First is how the communication system in HIMASISKAL. What obstacles do the HIMASISKAL members usually encounter when communicating? What kind of leadership figure is ideal for HIMASISKAL in general? How did HIMASISKAL choose leaders for both the association chairman and the division head? How is the mentoring process and programs at HIMASISKAL? Next. So for the objective and benefit in this research is how to know the communication system in HIMASISKAL, to know the obstacle that members usually encounter when communicating, to know the kind of leadership figure is ideal for HIMASISKAL in general, to know how HIMASISKAL choose leaders for both the association chairman and the division head, to know the mentoring process and program at HIMASISKAL. Next.
Organization profile of HIMASISKAL vision the glory movement of ITS HIMASISKAL as an incubator of Indonesian maritime work mission. 1 point, HIMASISKAL Etika ITS, which is inclusive and professional. 2, image, escalation, and external relation. 3, optimization of member development. 4, actualization of job for Indonesian Marine. Next. This is organization structure of HIMASISKAL Etika ITS.
Section 2, review of literature. Communication theory. Communication is a means of connecting people with other human beings to achieve a goal. According to Raymond Ross, communication is the process of sorting, selecting, and symboling delivery in such a way that helps the recipient generate the same message, response, or listening meaning as intended by the communicator. There are two systems in communication, downward and upward. Downward communication is the delivery of information from superiors to subordinates in accordance with the structure in the organization. And then upward communication is the delivery of information from subordinates to superior. Communication can be done or delivered into several forms and classified into two, namely oral and written communication. Oral communication is the condition of communication that can be face-to-face, tied to space and time, using the dominant organs of the mouth and ears, even in some events involving the organ of vision in the form of eyes And then written communication is communication conducted through writing as done in correspondence activities by post, telegram, fax, email, and anything else. Writing communication must meet several principles, among others, completeness, concise, thoughtful, concrete, clear message, polite, and with the correct language. The type of written communication can be in the form of letters or memos and reports.
So the next one is leadership theory. The first one is the trait theories. So researchers believe that a person's leadership capabilities are rooted in his or her characteristics. There are 4 groups of common leader traits: personality, demographic, task competence, and interpersonal attributes. The first one is personality. If it's about personality, based on leadership literature using Big 5 framework, extroversion is considered as a predictive trait for effective leadership. People who are naturally dominant and sociable are more likely to assert themselves in a group environment, which helps them to be identified as leaders. But always remember that an effective leader is not domineering. The second one is demographic. Some people tend to be rigid in terms of choosing leaders based on gender. The next one is task competence. Task competence has to do with how people handle mission, execution, and completion. The last one is interpersonal attributes. Task competence has to do with how people handle mission execution and completion. So the next one is behavioral theories. According to behavioral leadership theory, a leader's performance is determined by their actions rather than their natural characteristics. If trait theory helps us to select the right people to be leaders, a behavioral theory is an opposite. The behavioral theory of leadership helps us to train people to be leaders. Based on Indeed.com, here are types of behavioral leadership that contains a different sets of behaviors. For example, people-oriented leaders, text-oriented leaders, participative leaders, and many more. And the next one is contingency theories. The contingency theory stresses the importance of a leader's personality as well as the context in which he or she works. When certain situations happen, not every leadership style will be appropriate. And the next one is responsible theories, consisted of authentic leadership, ethical leadership, and servant leadership. Authentic leaders are aware of who they are and what they believe in, and they act freely and honestly on those ideals and convictions. The ethical top leadership has an impact not just on immediate followers, but also on an entire command structure. Servant leaders look beyond their self-interest to find ways to help their followers grow and develop. And the last one is mentoring. So leaders have the responsibility of developing future leaders for his or her organization. Formal mentoring relationships will not always be more effective compared to informal mentoring.
Century research method next. Data collection method. The data collection technique you use is to conduct an observation and interview with ITS naval architecture student colleagues who have become the HIMASISKAL ITS organizational staff. The interview held on Monday, April 12, 2020 at
So the next is variable detress. In this research study is intended to find out how the communication and leadership system that exists in the ITS HIMASISKAL organization. So in this study has some variable which are communication theory, direction of communication, modes of communication, barriers to effective communication, and responsible leadership. Next. And the next is qualitative or interview. So the type of interview that we use in this research is open-ended or unstructured interview. Unlike the structured interview, this kind of interviewing is an open situation through which a greater flexibility and freedom is offered to both sides, interviewers and interviewees, in terms of planning, implementing, and organizing the interview content and question. And in this study, the researchers asked the following question. The first is, how is the communication system in ITS HIMASISKAL? Second is, what obstacle do you often face when communicating? The third is, what is the ideal leadership figure for ITS HIMASISKAL in general? The fourth is, what is the HIMASISKAL process in choosing a leader? And the next is, how is the mentoring process at HIMASISKAL going? And last is, what are the characteristics of leadership in HIMASISKAL? And this is the research flow chart. The first, we start, and then we identify the problem, and we do the study of literature, and then we collect the data by interview, and we process it, and then we analyze the data, and we can conclude it, and then we finish the research.
And the next one is section 4, or discussion. So the first one is communication system in HIMASISKAL. So after interviewing our interviewees, Alfius Lanang Wika Satwika, a staff member of the PSDM department, we received a brief explanation about the communication system in HIMASISKAL. First, regarding the functions of communication in HIMASISKAL. Within a group or organization, communication serves 5 key functions: management, feedback, emotional sharing, persuasion, and information exchange. HIMASISKAL as an organization needs a good communication system to make sure this organization is well managed. HIMASISKAL also needs a good communication system to make sure each member of this organization shares the same vision, able to connect emotionally, able to persuade each member to be active, and able to exchange information. HIMASISKAL implements a downward communication system. So as explained before in section 2, downward communication is the delivery of information from superiors to subordinates following the structure of the organization. As the staff of the PSDM department, the department head of PSDM is the one who explains the job directions from the president of HIMASISKAL. And the president of HIMASISKAL, as the top manager in this organization, will explain everything, including the job directions, organization plans, organization's next main activities to the department leaders first. And after that, each department leader needs to explain more detailed information to his or her department staff. Before the pandemic started, Alfius often communicated directly with, via offline meetings with other staff of his department. They communicate informally, just as department staff tries to engage with each other. But after the pandemic started, they suddenly needed to switch to online meetings or only chatting via social media. So for HIMASISKAL, both oral and written communications are needed. Before the pandemic happened, Alfius and the other staff of his department didn't spend too much time communicating with written communication mode because they were able to meet each other directly. But right after the pandemic happened, communicating with written communication mode is becoming extremely important, as they won't spend too much time communicating with each other via Google Meet or Zoom unless it's a formal forum for department meetings or HIMASISKAL's meeting. And even though HIMASISKAL is using the downward communication system as their main communication system, HIMASISKAL is still trying to implement the upward communication system too. So there is a HIMASISKAL communication system that provides a forum for staff members to provide opinions such as criticism and suggestion, which is called PPH Kepo. This communication is carried out as communication from subordinates, namely staff members, to superiors, namely the chairman and his college. And the implementation of the communication is carried out every month with 2 implementations in each department in HIMASISKAL. So HIMASISKAL staff members will be able to give the top management feedback, suggestions, and criticism.
Public obstacles that members usually encounter when communicating. Point 1, the obstacles in the communication system at HIMASISKAL is the less than optimal control from the department head to staff member toward the direction of task responsibility in accordance with the workload of each position. HIMASISKAL department, there is not enough communication about control that direct staff member to be responsible for the workload appropriately and well. Point 2, in the HIMASISKAL communication system, there are miscommunications such as misunderstanding during the presentation of discussion that lead to debates. However, HIMASISKAL does not often experience miscommunication because it is minimized by conveying voice or opinion during discussion. Next. A class that member usually encounter when communicating. Point 3, there are communication barriers related to emotion, language, honesty, and cultural barrier in HIMASISKAL, namely the use of language action from cultural different during face-to-face or offline discussion meeting. Point 4, communication barrier in HIMASISKAL are that conduction online meeting using Google Meet and Zoom meeting cannot explain the implementation of values that should be given directly face-to-face. Next.
So the next is ideal leadership figure for HIMASISKAL in general. So leader is a very important figure because he holds the greatest responsibility for his member. Therefore, an organization must have an ideal leader who is able to lead their organization so that it can run better. So based on the past interviews, it is known that HIMASISKAL has an ideal figure for his organization. The ideal leader figure for HIMASISKAL is someone who is able to see everything broadly or known as helicopter view. And the definition of helicopter view is a term that describes how a person views the entire system from a various aspects. Or in other words, HIMASISKAL expect their ideal leader to have a broad view. And by having this broad view, of course, it is hoped that the leader in HIMASISKAL can know what steps he should take when he is faced with certain situation and also expected to be able to know the impacts that will occur when he takes those steps. And for the current leader of HIMASISKAL management, his figure is considered ideal because in the midst of a difficult situation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused all activities to be online, he was able to adapt quite quickly. And this can be proven by the work program compiled by the leaders in HIMASISKAL. The work programs they present tend to be more creative and adaptive to the current situation. And this cannot be separated from the way the leader convey his goals and expand the scope of his work program so that it can be of interest to many people. Next. And in addition to having an ideal leader, HIMASISKAL also strive to build a leader in their organization. And the leader figure who is trying to build HIMASISKAL itself is a leader who has a servant leader type. And this type of servant leader is a type of leader who focus more on the development of its member or on the development of the organization internal human resource. And this can be proven by the existing work program in HIMASISKAL. Students at HIMASISKAL tend to prioritize the kaderisasi work program, which is a development and orientation program, especially for new students. And in this period, the hallmark of leadership at HIMASISKAL is leadership that brings friendly and harmonious values. And bringing this friendly and harmonious value is intended so that each staff can become more harmonious with each other, not only harmony between staff, but with the existence of his friendly and harmonious value. And efforts are also made to ensure that the staff and their division heads are harmonious so that the implementation of work programs can run seriously and smoothly. And bringing this value is also expected to make all members in HIMASISKAL able to create a harmonious environment without discriminating between one group or another. Next.
The next is method to choose leaders for both the head of HIMASISKAL and the division head. The head of HIMASISKAL is elected by the members like a pemilu in Indonesia. So they are directly elected by the members, or commonly called citizen of HIMASISKAL. This election is carried out democratically and is carried out in a direct public free, confidential, honest, and fair manners. The candidates who has the most votes will become the new chairman and replace the previous chairman. He is the one who will be responsible for HIMASISKAL. In choosing the head of division, the head of HIMASISKAL choose directly and privately. The head of HIMASISKAL is free to choose whomever he or she wants to be her head of the division, who is chosen by the head of to be the head of division will be announced at the time of handover of position, or commonly called certificate. Next. There are two mentoring programs at HIMASISKAL. First is namely kaderisasi, which is mentoring program for new students. And the second is marine leadership, is for students who will become staff to replace the previous management. First is kaderisasi. The system is to divide the new student into several mentoring groups, wherein each group there is one mentor. The task of a mentor is to be in charge of the assignment letter. In the mentoring process provide, new students will be given an assignment according to the target or value that must be instilled in them. In its implementation, there are benchmarks for the success of work given. The benchmark for the success is made by the cadre element, where they are tasked with overseeing the process of regeneration. Next. The second is mentoring program, is namely Marine Leadership Camp. This event aims to prepare staff who will replace the previous management. The material present at this event were LKMM TM materials such as RPU, AKU, and etc. This event was organized by a certain committee under the auspices of PSDM, PSDMTL. This event was held according to the situation at the time. If the situation allows it to be held offline, then the event will be held outside of the city. But if it's not possible, then it will be held online, which will be held via Google Meet. Next.
Section 5, conclusion and suggestion. Next. Conclusion, we can conclude that the HIMASISKAL use a downward communication system as a main communication system, but also use an upward communication system. And then communication system in HIMASISKAL has not been optimal. In particular, the communication that took place between the head of the department and the staff. This is an interference with the surveillance system. Therefore, the task of which the officer to the members is not optimal. So the head of the department must back up on the responsibilities of his staff. In addition, there is miscommunication such as misunderstanding during exposure, but discussion are not in the height. And then there are communication barriers related to emotion, language, honesty, and cultural barriers in HIMASISKAL, namely the use of language accent from cultural difference during meeting and discussion. HIMASISKAL leaders is typical servant leaders. A servant leader is a leader who focus more on the development of its member or the development of the organization internal human resource. HIMASISKAL leadership bring friendly and harmonious values to the staff and their division. And then the chairman of the association or KAHIMA, HIMASISKAL is elected by the election system. And the last is there are two mentoring program at HIMASISKAL, namely kaderisasi, which is a mentoring program for a new student, and marine leadership camp for students who will become staff to replace the previous management. Suggestion, Suggestion for department heads to further increase the intensity of communication with staff aimed at improving supervision and building team solidarity to continue to motivate to improve the integrity and moral of staff. And then suggestion for the president of HIMASISKAL to create a character and culture of mutual respect and understanding of the difference in language, culture, race, and ethnicity. Here is the documentation. When we do the interview with the SDM staff of HIMASISKAL, Alvis Lanang Wigarsatwika, and the interview was held on Monday, 12th April 2020 at 3 p.m. via Zoom platform. That's all from us. Thank you for your attention.